Hey guys, I'm here with the Moto G7 series. Now we've got three different phones. We've got the Play, the G7, and the brand new G7 Power. Let's talk about what's the same on all three at this point. They all run Android 9, which is the latest version of Android. They all come with a Snapdragon 632 processor, but they vary in lots of different ways. Let's talk about the G7 first, and then we'll talk about what makes them different. The G7 this year costs $299 because in a new mid-range in the power mode. Let's talk about the G7 a little bit more. You've got the small notch on the top, a very modern design with a 19:9 aspect ratio, two cameras on the back, and you can actually do portrait mode with the two cameras or on the front camera through software. Each of these Motorola devices has the ability to do portrait mode. Some can do it with a dual camera, some can do it in software, and that's a really good feature to have when it comes to a nice budget phone. Sarah looks happy. Also new on the G7 is a new auto smile capture mode. So if you have a subject and they're smiling and standing still, the phone will automatically take a picture of that person. If you have multiple people, it'll wait for all of them. It also works on the selfie cam. That camera feature is not available on the 7 Power or the 7 Play. The G7 series has a brand new camera trick. It's called hyperlapse. It's a video time-lapse feature that stabilizes everything for you as you're running around. It looks pretty cool. So playing around with the G7, it's really zippy. It doesn't feel like a budget phone in any way. The build quality is quite good. There's glass on the back. But the glass on the back does not allow wireless charging. None of these devices have wireless charging. But at that price point, I don't know if anyone's going to worry about it. You got USB-C on the bottom, and you have a headphone jack, which is a very nice feature to have in 2019. What an idea. Motorola's been quite good about keeping their version of Android quite light. You're not going to have a ton of skinning on this. These feel like an actual stock Android for the most part. There are some nice flourishes thanks to Motorola. Google Photos is the stock app for photos on this. The Moto G7 has 4 gigabytes of RAM, and inside you're going to get 64 gigabytes of storage. I guess that means we should talk about the other G7s. In my left hand is the G7, in my right hand is the G7 Power. Like I said, this is brand new for this year. They actually have the same screen size at 6.2 inches, but the G7 Power is a little taller. Also, the screen res on the G7 Power is a little lower than the G7. So the G7 Power is actually the $249 model. It's the mid-range of the G7 series. On the back, you've got one camera, you've got the fingerprint sensor, and the back is not Gorilla Glass, this is a polymer glass. On the top, you have the headphone jack, not on the bottom. That's fine. It's got some bigger chins because of the larger 5,000 milliamp hour battery that Motorola claims will give you 3 days of battery life. That's insane. They also say that if you charge this for 15 minutes, you'll get 9 hours of battery life. That's pretty impressive. This thing has 3 gigabytes of RAM. It has 32 gigabytes of storage. Again, it's the $249 model. Now in my hand, I've got the Moto G7 Play. Now, this is the least expensive model at $199. On the back, there's no glass, but that's okay. You've got a fingerprint sensor, a single camera on the back, headphone jack on the top, and you've got a USB port on the bottom, USB-C. It's got the same processor as the other models with 2 gigabytes of RAM. It also has 32 gigabytes of storage on board. All three of these can be expanded with a micro SD card to up to 512 gigabytes of storage thanks to micro SD expandability. The build quality on the G7 Play, it's $199, so it feels pretty good. I would say if I had to compare this to any device I've ever held, think of the Samsung Galaxy S3. You know that really old phone, it's kind of a plasticky back and it's got a decent front? This is not bad from $199. In the limited time I've got to use these three devices, they're running the Snapdragon 632 processor, and I will say everything felt very zippy. Things were responsive, the screens feel good, they look good. Now again, these aren't the highest res devices, and unless you're doing VR, you're probably not going to notice it. So if it's right here, you might see pixels, but I don't know who does that. Maybe you do it. That's weird. The new Moto G7s will be around in the spring in North America, but here's the thing, there's actually one more that won't be available in North America. It's called the Moto G7 Plus. It's got a slightly faster processor, and we'll cover that in a different video. Stay tuned to CNET for a full review of each of these phones coming up soon.